We really make the marketing process personal to the office and to the dentist and what they're looking for and who they are and what their message is. And then we look for ways to automate the parts of it that don't need to be done by an admin or a front desk person, so they can focus on being human at the front desk.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of the Raving Patients podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Len Tao. Hope everybody's doing well and is having a great day, month, whatever you're doing right now. So today's episode, I'm excited. You know, one of the things I really enjoy doing on my podcast is taking people or companies or products that many have not heard of or have been introduced to in the industry. They come on my show. I welcome them to the dental industry to some extent. And today is one of those instances. The gentleman I'm going to be interviewing today, his name is Tyler Jorgenson. His company is called For Sale Digital Marketing. I met Tyler in March, or actually April of 2021, so not too long ago, down in Miami, not far from where I live, at the Dental Festival put on by Elijah Desmond. He was introduced to me, and we spent some time talking about how to attract really high-ticket dentistry to your practice, amongst other things, as well, because I do a lot of things outside of dental practice, as many of you know. And as of now, as of the time you're listening, I'm not owning my practice anymore. So we reconnected again in October at another one of the dental festivals. And I said, you know what, I got to bring you on to my podcast to kind of introduce you, what you do to the dentists out there, because I think it's really important, because you have a very unique way of basically driving patients to a practice, and it's using an automated lead system. So today we're going to be talking about what we call ethical marketing for high-ticket dentistry. Please welcome to the Raving Patients podcast, Tyler Jorgenson. Tyler, thanks for joining me today.
I'm super excited to be here, man. With that introduction, I was waiting for like the crowds to cheer and the but that's the sad part about podcasting. We don't have the audience, but but I'm super excited to be here. Thank you so much for bringing me out.
So now, Tyler, first thing I want you to do is I want you to tell the audience about you, what you do, how you help business, how you help dentists. I know you help a lot of other things, but also a little bit about one thing I like is about your podcast there too. I was very intrigued about that as well, considering that I'm a podcaster too.
Yeah, I am a podcast host. I've had a live radio show in Southern California on ABC News for 11 years. And it is now pre-recorded and it goes out on podcasts. It's called Biz Ninja Entrepreneur Radio. And we talk about the entrepreneurial journey because I've been an entrepreneur pretty much my whole life. And I think that dentistry is full of one of the most unique types of entrepreneurs. It's the expert who has figured out, who has done a ton of training and figured everything out, but now they have to own a practice. And there's a balance between being a practice owner and being a great dentist, and also all the other parts of owning a practice. And in my personal experience, I've owned restaurants, I've owned gyms, I've owned high-end gyms, I've owned a bunch of wellness and supplement brands. I've worked in a lot of industries, and I've found that there's a lot of commonalities of what makes businesses work and win. And so what we've been doing over the past 4 or 5 years, kind of behind the scenes, is just helping dentistry and the industry grow. And for about the last year, stepping in and starting to help dentists attract ideal customers. And so we work with dentists that are looking to attract high-ticket cosmetic, veneer, implant patients.
And I think that's great because, it's probably the one thing that I get most questions about is how do I attract these qualified patients who want to spend money on the procedures that I offer? And look, I have companies that I work with that do great SEO. They do great websites. They do great. Obviously, I help with reviews, and it's like a missing piece for me. And they bounce around from company to company to company, and yet they really don't find great success, great return on investment with these companies. So this is a definite need in the industry. That was one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on here, as well as just connecting you because you're a really, really cool guy, and I think someone thinks you do really awesome. So it's always good for that reason as well. But so I think the first thing I wanted to really kind of dive into is, how you see yourself as, I don't want to say different, but how you see yourself fitting into the, Joe Smith down the road who does Google AdWords for dentists. I think that's the first thing, because there are so many companies who come after dentists. I told you, and real quick, I was just at the dental implant conference. We're recording and filming this in December of 2021. I was just at the dental implant conference, and I spoke to an oral surgeon, and he's spending $2,500 a month on Google AdWords, and 45 to 50% of his budget is going to his branded keywords. And as you said, should be a much smaller number, but he feels like he's wasting his money because he's not getting much business from the $2,000 or $2,500 that he's spending.
And that's the real issue, right? The real issue is not that he's spending $2,500. The real issue is not that he's spending 40% of it on branded. The real issue is that he doesn't know what his ROI is.
Correct, 100%.
He doesn't know what percentage. So you answered the question that you asked for me, which is, what do we do that's different? So when you and I first connected, we were talking about the power of reviews and the power of Google and the power of doing those things. And we call that in our industry, in my company, dominating the basics. Like the difference of someone who's managing their Google and their Google My Business account, I think they're changing the name of that, but like at the basic level, like doing a good job at the basics, you're going to stand out from the other 80% of dentists that are not doing the basics. And so like there are some basic things that you can do. But you know what? There's a lot of agencies, there's a lot of teams out there that will also say that same thing. And where we become really different is on the next two parts of that we really talk on, which is amplifying your ACEs and embracing automations. So what we build is a system that not only says, hey, here's where you're spending your Google ads, but here's what your cost per lead is. And not only cost per lead, but here's where that lead tracks all the way into a patient for you. And so, now where your ad dollars spent well. Because there's a lot of companies out there that would just say, hey, you're only going to spend this much on ads with us. And we're going to guarantee you somewhere between this number and this number of leads or new patients. My issue as an entrepreneur is that's the wrong way to look at it. I should be able to say, here's my starting budget. I want to find out what my cost per ideal patient is. And then I should have a conversation about how many more do you want? And the dentist should be like at that point, armed with that good information, with quality data, should be able to make quality decisions that can grow their practice. And so that's the big thing that we do differently is we don't believe in just cookie cutter, but we do lean into what works and proven models and experts. But we really make the marketing process personal to the office and to the dentist and what they're looking for and who they are and what their message is. And then we look for ways to automate the parts of it that don't need to be done by an admin or a front desk person. So they can focus on being human at the front desk, right? Instead of worrying about tracking everything down, right? So our automation systems handle a lot of the mundane things so our humans can be human and really take care of the humans that come in through the doors.
And that all makes sense. So before we jump into like those different things, dominating the basics, automating your ACEs and embracing automations, as you said, I know one of the things you wanted to kind of focus on and talk about was that I know you have some really big success stories for some offices. And I think you had one in California that you brought in, I think, $1.25 million in new business. So can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think that's going to, when people hear this, their ears may perk. And if their ears perk, we may get a number of other people listening in once that happens.
Yeah, absolutely. And here's my favorite thing about it. It's all data driven. So it's not just, oh, here's this dollar amount and we can't look back at it all. So what we've done is we worked with the doctor to really make some compelling ad creatives that are personal, right? Like if you're running static images or you're running something that is stock or that you're using for every office across the country, and then someone comes through the doors, there's going to be a disconnect, right? Instead of building trust, you're starting on the wrong foot. So we really work with them to build great creatives. And so it does mean that the dentist wants to be a part of their growth, right? Or somebody in the office is going to need to be. So, but then as leads come through, we have automations and follow-ups and text message automations. We have AI that can work through the system to help make sure not only are we qualifying prospects right out the gate. Imagine if when someone came into your office, you knew if they needed financing or if they were already ready to get started. You knew some of their top questions, some of their all of the core things that you usually go through in your first few questions. Now you get to have more of a human conversation because you already have the data. So what we're seeing is that our conversion rate of people coming into the office is massively going up. And so not only are they making, is their marketing now more effective and each marketing dollar more effective, they're also able to see an increase of their close rate. And which also, it's amazing how much a close rate can change the morale of an office, right? If people are coming through and they keep leaving everyone, people feel that. Oh, what did I do wrong, right? So it also means the human's going to win better. And you'll hear me say that a lot because I want humans to win, right? And so anyways, but it's really neat. We can look through the entire pipeline. We can see we have the ability for all kinds of tracking and data that allows the office to make really, really smart decisions on what's working and what's not and what type of clients are coming in. Everyone says I want more of my ideal customers. Like, okay, well, what is that? And what does that look like? And what does it not look like? So our systems just help us to execute on those desires.
One of the struggles I have, and obviously when I talk about marketing, it isn't about just reviews. Obviously I sell reviews, but I talk about marketing in general. And that's why, doctors reach out to me afterwards. Hey, great seminar. Can we spend some time talking about what other options I have to market my practice? I struggle. And I think when I talk to doctors, when I say, in order to really drive these high-end procedures to your practice, you have to be willing to spend a nice budget on things. And I want to make it clear to people that are listening to this episode or watching this episode that they need to, be sitting down potentially when they're listening to this, because I think, a lot of people, they're spending a couple $100s on marketing and they think it's going to work. That's not the case here. Okay. For your clients, there's a minimum budget that you need to be spending when they work with a company like yours. This isn't in our list of speaking points, but I wanted to make it clear because you're not the only company. Look, I work with an SEO company and I warn people when they speak to him that his SEO prices are much higher than your typical SEO company. Because if you're spending $200 on SEO, they're not doing any SEO for you. You can't get good work for $200. And just like you're not going to get good results if you're spending $500 on Google AdWords. Okay. And a lot of times they're doing it on their own. And if they're doing it on their own, they're wasting money because they're not putting negative keywords in there. They're doing a lot of branded keywords. So can you just give an idea to the listeners, where the spend should be if they're looking to attract? And we're talking about high level dentistry here. We're talking about cosmetics. We're talking about implants. We're talking about Invisalign. We're not talking about general dentistry here.
Right. And I think that's an important distinction. If you're just a general local practice and you're just wanting to bring in the general local person, then you can have a pretty reasonable small budget. But if you're looking to scale, veneers that cost, $2,000 to $5,000 a veneer, and you want to be bringing in a lot of, or you want to be doing all on fours, or you want to be doing these cases that can be in the tens of thousands of dollars, but you're not willing to understand there's going to be a cost per acquisition that kind of is commensurate with that, right? They're related. Then there's a mismatch. So we recommend at a bare minimum, people are starting with some level of ad spend, ideally in around the $3,000 a month range, right? It's about $100 a day, right? And if you want to actually grow fast, could you start lower? Sure. But do we also have people that start higher? Absolutely. And those are the ones that see results faster because it all comes down to database decisions. And in the end, all we're doing with more budget is getting data points faster. So I always ask people, well, in the end, you're going to spend the same amount of money to get the same amount of data. So do you have more time or do you have more money? Because you're going to spend it. So you can either spend $2,000 a month for 5 months or you can spend $10,000 a month the first month, and you're going to get through that same amount of data. So it's all about time or money.
And depending on which keywords that you're looking to attract, obviously the cost of the click is more expensive for certain keywords than other keywords as well. So you're bidding on these keywords and you want to be the one that people click on. So you're spending more money to get to that top position in the AdWords, correct?
Yeah. And when I'm talking about ad spend, we're talking about total. So we're doing Google, a lot of times our clients, we're doing YouTube, we're doing Bing, we're doing Facebook and Instagram ads. So, and that's the total budget across it. And so what we do is we start by breaking up that budget across the platforms, and then we start leaning into the ones that are working the best and optimizing from there using the data-based, decision metric.
And then also, just to get this out of the way, on top of the $3,000, there's a management fee. And the management fee is I don't know if it's a set price or it's based on the budget. How do you work your management fees?
Yeah, we have a pretty standard set price. It does change over time, right? So since this is coming out in a few months, it might change, but it's a few $1,000s a month, as a management fee. And then for some clients, what they opt is to have also an incentive with us where, hey, you know what, I want you guys leaning in and really growing this. And so we have a percentage of revenue as well. And that's what we call our partner program. We deliver a lot for that, but then we're able to see, man, really, I believe in being mutually aligned, right? So in the past, in one of my companies, an ad agency came and said, hey, I want you to give me this base plus a percentage of ad spend. And that doesn't make any sense. You want me to pay you based on how much more of my money you're spending? I was like, what if we make a similar adjustment, but make that tied to revenue? Because that's what your job is. Your job is to bring me revenue, not spend my ad dollars.
Right. So the more money they bring you, the more money they make. It's mutually beneficial.
This isn't Mad Men era anymore, right? Where you're just going to publish a Kodak ad and hope that people see it, right? We have data now. So we need to shift the way that we're managing that. And so we use we have a below average base of what we charge compared to what I think the level of services we offer. And then we have a performance fee that keeps us mutually aligned, that as we help you scale, we scale.
And what I think is really nice about that, and guys, this is really important, is, I talked about this oral surgeon I spoke to that was spending $2,500 a month. He had absolutely no idea the results he was getting. Why? Because they had tracking numbers on all sorts of things, and they were all going into the same report. So he had the website phone number was going into the same report as the Google AdWords. So he had one tracking number that literally he had all these calls that were coming in for the same number. So they had no way to know unless they listened to the call what they came from necessarily. So he's telling you that it's performance based. So he's obviously able to track, if you want to do it that way, he's obviously able to track probably to the dollar amount exactly what he's delivering, which is the biggest problem.
And if I can't prove it, there's no performance fee owed. The burden's on us, right? So now obviously there's an ethical component, right? I really believe in a handshake agreement. I believe in honesty and integrity, right? I was a Boy Scout. But you've got to, in the end, there's got to be that trust, but we can track everything, right? So if somebody comes in and you're going to take them out of the system and try to close them a different way, but all that's going to do is hurt us all long term.
You're going to be able to know who calls the office from an ad that you did. You'll see that the office will know who it is, so they can track back what they're getting from what you're delivering. That's the missing part for most agencies, that they just give you an ad and you have no idea what you're getting. Oh, and I say, well, how do you know? Well, I'm getting calls that says they found me on Google. Well, you have no idea if that's from the ad or not. Most
people don't remember where they found you.
Of course.
So they'll say something because they now feel under pressure to respond. And they'll say Google, but what blows my mind is how many businesses are not set up on Apple Maps. Because they're like, wait, that's different? And I'm like, yeah, it's different. And if you're not set up there, it automatically will pull your data from Yelp. So if you're not making sure your Yelp campaign set, or and I don't recommend spending money there, but if you're not making sure your business information is accurate, There's a lot of people that never go in and change their mobile app, for maps on their phone. And so it's amazing how many people just don't think about it. Oh, I only thought about Google. It's it doesn't take that long to set up Apple Maps for your business.
But Apple is 70% of the phones, and that's the thing. So
yep. And it's these little things that so many times it's so easy to overlook because we're chasing the next big thing and we're trying to solve. And there's real big problems in running a practice, right? So you got to deal with them all.
Well, that's the nice thing is, they're running a practice. That's what they're doing. They're doing the dentistry. They can't manage everything else. That's why they hire companies. And sometimes, how much are you spending on this, this, and this? I ask them. I don't know. Well, I always tell them, my favorite show on TV, Shark Tank. I love that show. You must like it as an entrepreneur as well. I love that show. And you know what they always say in there? You have to know your numbers. If you don't know your numbers, you can't run a successful business. So when doctors don't know that information, I kind of laugh at myself. How do they run a successful business if they don't know the numbers of what they're doing in marketing or how much they're bringing in? They don't know their production numbers or their collection numbers or their adjusted production numbers. These are numbers they have to know to run their business. I find it very funny when these business owners have no clue about these things.
And I don't know the details of running a practice, but I do understand the details of running a business. And I think I am seeing a growing trend of practice owners really embracing that they need to understand this. And I see it's being more accepted. Because I've talked to some older dentists who almost felt that embracing the business side of it was a dishonor to their craft. Right. And I'm like, no, it just means if you run a good business and a good practice, if that's cohesive, you get to help more people. That's a good thing.
It is 100% so. So let's talk about, you mentioned there's three things dominate the basics, automate your aces, and embrace automation. So let's get into more specifics when it comes to that.
Yeah. So you and I have talked through a lot of the basic stuff, right? Making sure you have your Google and your Apple set up correctly, making sure you're getting reviews. These are credibility indicators that, are so powerful. And data on that better than anybody on how important these kind of simple fundamental things are, like reviews. So,
and I have a question on that real quick.
Yeah.
Within your it doesn't have to be only dental, but in your various industries that you work with, when it comes to reviews, do you see a specific minimum number of reviews you recommend before someone invests in what you do? Number one. And do you see, and the answer it's rhetorical really, but I'm assuming that you see when you compare two businesses on Google AdWords, do you see a different performance whether one has more reviews or not?
So on the first half, it really, really varies based on the product, the offer, the service. But absolutely, multiple reviews, period. And usually 3 or more. That's the minimum number where a review is even really considered credible from what I see. Especially in what we do in the e-commerce space, where someone's browsing Facebook and then they're going to put in a credit card. If they're not seeing some other people, some social proof, they get hesitant. And so a minimum of 3 at least helps that. But if there's only 3, you better be saying this is new. Right? You can't say this is, a best-selling product for 10 years and you only have 3 reviews. That's going to be a massive disconnect. And then on the second half of that, you were asking about what was
comparing two businesses with number of reviews. Does because there could be multiple ads running and they look them up. Do you see one if they have one has 100, one has 20? Do you see a different conversion there because of that?
Without a question, people go where other people go. Right? People follow. It's groupthink. It's social proof. It's whatever the term that you want to use. People want to think that they were critical and made a discerning decision. But the fastest way for them to scratch that itch is to just look at what other people already did. Right? So if they see 100 people at one and 20 people at another, they're just going to say, "Oh, look how good of a decision I'm making because these 100 people made it too." And so they're just going to go there. And they're going to scratch that itch of digging deeper. And that's what's even crazier is somebody who only has a few reviews, they'll get people digging deeper. If you have a lot of reviews, they'll browse it quickly and move forward because they assume that number of people have already handled the thought. They've already done the digging. There's always going to be the outliers. There's always going to be those people that are, the online Karens who are just going to dig deep and have fun with it. But generally speaking, credibility is huge. And credibility, it used to be the diploma on the wall, right? But people don't come into your office until they've already made a decision. So now you have to look for those other ways to have that credibility before. So the basics are these types of things, right? Dominating the basics means don't ignore it just because you've heard it at every conference you've ever been to. Don't ignore it just because you didn't do it last year, right? Or whatever. Look at your digital footprint. Ask yourself which things are you doing. And a lot of them are set it and forget it. Once you set it up correctly. But here's another thing that drives me absolutely crazy. If you have different hours, make sure that's getting updated on your Google. Make sure that's getting updated on your Apple Maps. One of the fastest ways to destroy credibility is if your office says you're open and people can't get a hold of you, or they drive to your office and it's closed. It is so hard to get that back, and it's not hard to keep that updated. So these are the basics. Managing your digital footprint to me is just communication in today's day and age. You are communicating to the masses before they even know they need to ask the question. And you can do that, and you can have your front office do that. You can set it up in a way. And that leads me to that next part, which is amplifying your aces. You have amazing people in your practice. You have the amazing things that you do that nobody else can do. You have that one person probably who is on your front office. When people call in, their appointment closing rate is higher than everyone else. You have somebody in your back office who their billing is better than everyone else. Amplifying your aces is saying, how do you find your absolute best experience and looking for ways to automate that and amplify it, right? So what we do in our lead generation systems is we make sure that your best salesperson is put on autopilot. And we say, hey, how do we make sure that the things that person does, that's their secret sauce and that really works for your practice? How do we make sure that's happening 24/7? Because you can't pay that person to sit there and work at the front desk for 24/7, right? And so really amplifying the A system means taking the best part of what your people and your team are doing, and then finding ways for that to just work for you around the clock.
Gotcha. Let's talk specifically about the automation part, because that's really what you build is a lead automation system. So can you, and I think a lot of people listening, watching are not going to really understand what that is, because not a lot of offices, not a lot of companies do that.
So I'll walk through an example of one that I absolutely love.
Okay.
So somebody fills out they see an ad, they go to it, they answer your basic questionnaire. Based on what their answers, we now know that this is a great, perfect client. So through we automate the next couple of steps that get them to fill out an appointment. The worst thing that can happen at that point is that they forget or something happens and they go from this they took all these steps to make an appointment so they don't show up. Now, looking at this from a consumer's point of view, especially how dentistry is hard for people. I mean, you guys know the data better than I do on how terrifying dentistry is for a lot of patients. People have a hard time emotionally coming into the dental office, which was weird for me to understand until I thought back about my siblings and realizing that one of my siblings absolutely hated it. And it was a terrifying and traumatic experience. I'm like, okay, well, just because for me it wasn't, I can see in my own life, I know people that it was. And I know people that have ignored going to the dentist. Anyways, all of these things. We all know that there's this bridge. Okay, they took the step to make the appointment, and now we have to get them through the door. So one of the cool automations that we do is we have text message automations. And the day before their appointment or the morning of their appointment, we have an automated system that can send out an image of the front of the office that says that has a sign that says, "Welcome new patients," and have the patient's name. 100% automated. You didn't have to go out and put that sign out there that day. You didn't have to go switch out the letters. You didn't have to do anything like that. But there's two things that this does that I think are really, really magical. One, it's personal. This doesn't look like just a scripted text message that they got, "Dear Susan, your appointment today with Dr. Len Tao is at 2 p.m. Please arrive on time and fill out this form," right? They get that all the time. They probably have 5 of them about their car's extended warranty right now, right? They get those boring text messages all the time. But if they get an alert that says, "Hey, this is what your front office first name, the person they're going to see first. And I'm excited to welcome you into our practice today." By the way, when you get here, here's what the front of our office looks like. Because how many times have you had people be like, "I can't find your office." They're calling last second. They're already panicked. Now when they come in the door, they're frazzled. They're lost. They're just like, stop. Like, there's ways we can help that, right? So that's one of my favorite automations. I think it is so human, so powerful. It creates this bridge and this connect that uses technology and automations to connect the person, the patient, to the front desk without any of them having to actually do it.
Wow, that's really interesting. I like it's really cool that you have that front desk thing or front door, because that's always seems to be an issue. They get lost. They don't know. Now they know exactly what the office looks like. And it's cool that you have it automated so you don't have to, nobody has to stand there and swipe out the letters.
And you don't have to do it that exact time, that way, right? Each office is going to have a different feel but we can build those automations and like I said, and I'll say it over and over again, we want the experience to feel human so the humans can focus on being human and doing what only they can do.
Gotcha. So what do you think is, and I get people reaching out to me and they say, "Hey, I want to do implants. I want to do Invisalign. I want to do cosmetics." Where do you think your sweet spot is in terms of those three? Where do you think you are better at attracting, patients for offices? Is there any specific thing that you really think is a better fit for you?
Yeah, if I had to pick between those three, I'd say high-end cosmetic for a couple of reasons. One, I think there's just a lot of people doing Invisalign, and there's a lot of dental offices as well. So the competition's high. Pretty much every dental office you walk by has the Invisalign on their front door. And then there's also a lot more online competition with that. And then implant, we do a great job, but there's a lot of other great people out there that do it too. I think what we do that's so unique about cosmetic is because of what we're talking about with our kind of 3 steps, and focusing on the human element, it makes what we do really unique and really allow the practice owner to really focus on just serving and practicing their craft while still creating a really cool, powerful experience.
Gotcha. So you've been doing this for a while. I know that you said you were behind the scenes in the dental space, in the dental industry for 5 years. You've learned a lot over the years. Obviously, you're now trying to get more towards the front end of things where you're really helping dentists grow their businesses. I'm sure there's a lot you've learned over those years. Can you give the audience like a sneak peek at some of those things you've learned to get so that, and again, you're an entrepreneur by heart, so you have a little different perspective on things. So I'm curious what you want to share with them.
For the past 5 years, I've been working more with businesses within dentistry. So businesses who are looking to get in front of other dentists or are looking to sell to dentists. And we've been helping them find more dentists. So the irony is now we're looking to help dentists find their patients, right? It's like going down the supply chain or links of the ladder here. But it's interesting seeing that many practices kind of from behind the scenes and that many businesses within dentistry. There are commonalities between people who are growing and people who are not. And the number one thing is accountability. And I notice this in every industry. So this is not dental specific. But there are entrepreneurs and business owners that I talk to, and especially in dentistry, where you talk to them about, hey, how's business growth? And if the answer, I was talking with one dentist, and he's like, man, we're definitely not growing as fast as you want. And then because was the next word. And he listed 5 things, and they were all external. They were all external factors. And there's one conversation I still remember really distinctly, and it's part of the main reason I decided this is really smart to do. So, and this is something I needed to help people with and practice owners. He said, this was about 2 years ago. Google had just rolled out a change that if your website was not mobile optimized, they were going to start deranking you. We had just finished talking about how important it was to mobile optimize in the previous conversation I'd had with this practice owner about 6 years prior, or 6 months before that. Hey, you got to do this. You got to do this. Got to do this. Follow up. Hey, how's it going? Well, there's this another practice opened up down the street, and we've noticed businesses really declined since then. I'm like, interesting. How's your website? Oh, we haven't touched it. Okay. You know that this is happening. Like, you're saying it's because the practice owner opened, but why are they going there? We looked, he was easier to find. It wasn't just geography. It was his digital geography. He was dominating the basics. So the accountability of like, what do I need to do? The ownership of I'm the practice owner. What do we need to be doing to create the results we want? As opposed to, well, I hired this marketing agency and I don't know how they're doing. Or I hired someone else to do my website. I don't know how it's going. Like, you've got to own this stuff. You have to ask questions. And if you're not getting the answers, there's an issue there. But a lot of times they're just not even asking the right questions. So I know that's kind of a roundabout way of explaining it, but owning the process, owning the fact that you are the business owner, you've spent all this time, all this money to become an amazing professional. You probably do a great job in your profession. But if you've decided to be a practice owner, you're a business owner, and owning that and taking the accountability that like there's nobody else to blame. Like, there's always going to be algorithm changes. There's always going to be competitors. There's always going to be changes in the industry. The accountability is the number one thing that I see as the difference between those who are growing and thriving and those who are struggling and really being frustrated with their current trajectory.
One last question I had, and it wasn't on the speaking list, but I'm curious what your thoughts are on this. Obviously, I'm very big into case acceptance. And this goes hand in hand to literally what we're talking about here, in the sense that you're driving potential business to a practice. How do you find that these offices that you're using are at closing these cases? Do you find that as a struggle sometimes with some of your clients that you work with? What is your recommendation if they come to you and say, hey, you're sending me these cases, but I can't close them? How do you handle case acceptance within your space? Because I know a lot of other vendors struggle with that.
We don't personally work on case acceptance or training. So if they're saying that, it's interesting because it's kind of like a 2-step answer. The type of dentists and practice owners that we work with usually have addressed this already. So they've usually either worked with somebody or they've done training. They've already owned that part of it, usually, because they're the type of people who are taking accountability and taking ownership and looking inside their practice. And most of them are starting something internal before they really figure out go amplify marketing. But if the issue is, man, we're driving you a ton of leads, and I can tell based on what's going through the system that these are quality, and you're still not able to really see the positive benefit, like, and we see that case acceptance is lower, and we're looking at the data and we can see it, then my advice is to talk to an expert, right? And that I think is the second part of accountability. Is just because it's your responsibility doesn't mean it's your responsibility to do it alone. Seek advice, seek counsel, seek an expert, talk to somebody, call up Len and say, hey, what do I need to do? I have all these people coming through the door and we're just not closing. So it's the double-edged sword of accountability. It's your job, it's your responsibility, but it doesn't mean you don't get asked for help.
Gotcha. All right. That's really good. So before we kind of wrap up the podcast, as the listeners and viewers know, I have a fun little section that I like to do. It kind of gives a little different take on the guest in your case, Tyler. I have an app called Poddex for those who want to see it. That's called Poddex. I asked the guest what deck they want to pick. Tyler picked a different one today, one I haven't done before, called The Hustle. And it's basically find out what makes the guest successful. So I'm going to read, we'll do 10 questions, Tyler. You just basically answer the question to the best of your ability, and we'll go through them pretty quickly, rapid fire questions. If I don't like the question, I'll skip it. First one is, how did you build or choose your team?
The first thing was through proximity. Your first couple of hires for me were people I knew, people I needed to bring on the team. And my team started because I had an e-commerce and retail supplement brand line, and I was growing and I needed to have a team. When I sold those companies, I was left with a cool team. And now I really work through the power of my network and referrals to bring on the next, additional team members.
Gotcha. Okay. What is one subscription you don't want to live without?
I couldn't do without Slack. That's how we communicate with our entire team.
Okay. Slack it is. How do you capture and keep track of ideas? Do you keep a notebook or voice memos?
I just use notes on my phone. And I send myself messages, or basically just do notes there. If it's something that I don't want to just have a note, but I also need to turn into an action item, like really it's a big thing, I'll write the note and then I'll email it to myself and it gets into my to-do list.
What led you to start a podcast like Biz Ninja?
So 11 years ago, I was looking to buy remnant radio space to run ads for my company. When I was talking with the owner of the radio station about advertising, he was like, man, you have a really interesting story. And 3 months later, I was live on air interviewing people like Neil Patel and Tim Ferriss and a bunch of people that had been on Shark Tank and have been doing it ever since, just interviewing today's top entrepreneurs.
Gotcha. What's the most common reason for people failing or giving up?
Man, I see those two things totally different. So I think sometimes giving up is right. And I think failing is pride. You're hanging on too long to things that aren't working. I think failing needs to happen more and needs to happen faster.
Gotcha. How do you distinguish yourself from your competitors? That's funny because we kind of talked about that.
We did. We already addressed it. Yeah.
Okay.
No, but honestly, I'll tell you, my number one thing is I just actually care. Like there are a lot of people who just don't care about humans and don't care about the people they're working with. And I deeply, deeply care. So that means we go deep into what actually the practice needs, not just what they say they want.
Perfect. Okay. If you had one piece of advice to someone who's just starting out, what would it be?
Get clear. Get clear on what you're actually wanting to build, not just the back of the napkin idea, but get clear on what you want to build and what the steps are going to need to be to show that you're moving in the right direction.
All right. Last one here. This is a good one. What books have you read multiple times?
Oh, The 4-Hour Workweek, The Ultimate Sales Machine by Chet Holmes. And those are my main two. And then Expert Secrets and .com Secrets by Russell Brunson.
Perfect. So before we wrap it up, I know you wanted to throw an offer out to the viewers or listeners if they reach out to you. So what do you want to toss out to them?
So we normally charge $1,000 to do a marketing audit of basically what the core dominate the basics are. And so I'm offering that to listeners of Raving Patients and only Len's favorite people for free. So we will do an audit of your how you're doing and your basics of your marketing. And so the link for that is forsale.live/raving.
So forsale.live/raving.
Yep.
Before I close the podcast, is there anything else that you want to make sure you let the listeners and viewers know?
Man, I just hope that as you're going into this, I know this is going to be airing in early 2022. I think it's important to just take stock. Are you loving what you're doing? And if there's parts of your business that aren't working for you, like ask for help to fix that. Because one of the biggest things I learned from when I was on a panel just at this last dental festival, and I listened to all of the speakers and the dentists speak, is how bad and how real of an issue mental health is, especially in dentists. And so if there are things that aren't working that are aggravating that, like please reach out for help. That's the biggest thing I would say.
And there you go. So Tyler, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope I know the audience will definitely find value in what we talked about. We shared a lot of high level information for them. I know just from what I talk to doctors about is they just don't get real high level Google AdWords and funnels and those types of things. So and I know you have done it consistently for many industries. So again, thank you for joining me. Guys, if you like this episode, please make sure you like it. Please make sure you share it. Please make sure you review us. The podcast is available on all the podcasting networks. Comes out Fridays at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So please subscribe to it and know that it's available. And just let everybody know about it. Reach out to Tyler if you want his assistance. Reach out to me if you want my assistance. My information is available all over the place. And as I always like to end my podcasts, please remember that your reputation matters. Until the next episode, Tyler, again, thanks for joining me today, and we'll talk to everyone soon.